We'll move on. The next speaker is Noel Cranswick. Noel or Marion, are they? Jessica Pinney. Is Jessica? Oh, thank goodness, Jane Crone's here. Welcome, Jane, you're the next speaker.
Thank you. I'm also against the proposal for a whole lot of reasons, but slightly different ones. The main new pavilion that's being proposed will be twice the size of the old building, and therefore there's going to be a lot more increased use. There'll not be enough parking for the increased and extended use of the park. There is not enough parking now when the sporting fixtures are in full swing. I was down there for quite a few of the meetings, and there was a lot of difficulty parking when the football was on. Clubs were coming and going, there's a lot of movement. The facilities and park are in the dead-end pocket of a residential street. The only access road is extremely problematic because for most of its length it's a single lane with a deep water-filled culvert along one side. Cars often have to reverse to a few small passing indentations or parking bays. If you've ever driven down there, it's extremely difficult. Drivers get very cross. It's not a nice experience at all going in and out of there. In fact, I thought I wouldn't bother going again. The small timber pavilion has been heritage listed by you, the council. Surely it could be upgraded. And if it can't be upgraded, it could be even relocated. I would prefer it to be staying and upgraded, but it could be relocated like the Timbershire offices were. So you've moved those to the park, it's where Warringal now meet. Surely it could be saved. Graham Gunn, the architect that did design this building, is extremely well regarded, a winner of many awards, and the designer of the Elliston estate with Merchant Builders. It should not be destroyed. I was actually talking on the phone to Graham recently. He's still alive, he's in his 90s. Ivanhoe Grammar has lost the trust of many residents over many years. I won't go into that, but it was obvious at the meetings that there were concerns. I'm concerned at the length of the lease that's being requested. Why not make it shorter? And if there's no concerns, if the school does the right thing, I'm sure the council would be only too happy to extend it. Surely we can trust each other. Has the council upgraded the public toilets also, as was promised at Chelsworth Park? I'm not talking about the ones in the pavilions, the public toilets. I want to know because they were meant to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. The next one will be a written statement read out by Darren Bennett from Carroll 8. Welcome, Darren.
Dear councillors, thank you for your work for the community and inviting input on the Chelsworth Park proposed lease. Please consider the following questions, comments. 1. Decisions made today will affect future residents for the decades to come. You're making decisions on their behalf and they, not us, will bear the consequences of any oversights, omissions or short-sighted decisions. Please take the care and time you need to make a considered and informed decision and with future residents in mind. 2. What alternative options have been considered? This is prime land in a limited space. For example, has the site been valued and market rent estimated? Would it be a viable alternative for the council to maintain the land and IGS pay market rent? Was there a public tender for expressions of interest from other parties for the space? What other options might there be? 3. What legal protections and assurances do we have that parts of Chelsworth Park cannot be blocked or fenced off for any time during the term of any lease? IGS have demonstrated form in erecting numerous fences around its site in recent years, including blocking all access via Elfin Lane, reducing the community amenity. 4. What legal protections and assurances do we have that IGS cannot make possession of any of the Chelsworth Park land at any time now or in the future, for example through adverse possession? 5. Has council driven the terms of the lease in the favour of the residents, or have these been received from IGS? How can council be sure the best interests of residents, current and future, are reflected in the lease? 6. As the lease currently stands, is it substantially in favour of IGS? IGS is dictating the lease term and the amenity of the built amenities to be built to justify the new lease benefit IGS substantially more than the community. The IGS site has limited open space because of its building program, so needs this lease of the park. Has there been pushback from council on the length of the lease, its content and terms to protect the community interests? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. There was a couple of points raised there, and we can't ask the Speaker questions, so I'll ask the Director. The issue was raised about whether it would be possible for any new fences to be built as part of this lease agreement. Can you respond to that? Or any fences built?
As in, if I could clarify, could the lease specify whether a fence is built or whether a fence is not
No,
built?
as part of this lease agreement, will there be any new fencing considered?
Not to my understanding, there's no new fencing proposed, no.
And the other question was about adverse possession. So after a period of time, would the school potentially be able to claim this land under adverse possession claims?
Thank you, Mayor. No, council's protected from adverse possession claims under property law, so nobody can make an adverse possession claim against land in our ownership.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next speaker, Robin Roberts. Welcome, Robin.
So there is no hurry to advance a new lease. Chatswood has time to consider whether this proposal for major building works on a floodplain and tying up a key council asset with a privilege for one user is a good idea or not. Yes, considered a new updated lease with IGS, but not one that adds extra pressure to this rare gem of nature which operates in a quiet cul-de-sac at one edge of Banyule. Adjacent to intact Aboriginal lands, remnant bullabongs, the Yarra River Green Wedge, the Williamstown to Warrandyte Scenic Tourist Route and the main Yarra Trail, and a quiet residential enclave. I would argue with the proposal for extra built form on the Yarra floodplain where most of Council's drainage for the south side of Eaglemont, Ivanhoe, including the shopping centre, and East Ivanhoe ends up. It is not a good idea in this era of climate change, and other councils have rude decisions to add built form to floodplains. The proposal also involves removing heritage building, contrary to the planning scheme, contravening the scheme's significant landscape overlay with a two-storey building, building on a floodplain again, extending the current brick pavilion greatly to the south. It cannot go north due to the trunk sewer. Also reduces the main public pedestrian access onto the playing fields from the car park and southern pavilion. Enlargements of the pavilion's capacities for more teams to play simultaneously on more of the playing fields will bring attendant problems of extra car parking demand, extra traffic access, which is required to be through a narrow residential inlet along Irvine Road, in this dead-end location with no outgoing routes. Council staff are also proposing extra use of the site on evenings and weekends when sport is not being played. This will also cause conflicts with car parking and access for passive users and extra traffic through small residential roads aperture to the site. Events at night, currently the lease allows gates open till 11, will create nuisance with car headlights and noise for both wildlife and residents alike. And there's more points there, and I hope you find time to read it.
We will, Robin.
And I'll give you a few phone calls before you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. I've noticed a few other people have entered the room since we started. Was there anyone that was listed to speak that hasn't had an opportunity to speak as yet? Christian Cortez, John McCubry, Belinda Ford, Noel Cranswick and Jessica Pinney. I'm sorry they're not here tonight, so...
Mayor, may I just ask, I'm just thinking, we did bring this item forward. I'm just thinking whether it'd be possible that those are missing because they thought it was going to be later on in the evening.
There was a request from residents to bring this forward.
Yeah, okay.
And the residents advised in written confirmations is the meeting starts at 7. doesn't specify a time for when an item will be heard.
Yeah, I understand the process. I think it's okay, but I'm just thinking that, I'm sort of thinking out loud, Mayor.
I was thinking the same thing, actually. And these are written, if people can agree, then we could have the opportunity, they could certainly welcome to ring councillors, but these are written submissions, so that's not their only submission. We've also received written submissions from these people. And unfortunately, if they do turn up, I'm not sure if we can give them the opportunity to speak later on, probably not, sorry. So it's disappointing they haven't been able to attend for whatever reason tonight, but I think we'll meet. So I think we'll move on. There is an officer report in the agenda. I look for a councillor to move a motion. Moved Councillor McKern, seconded Councillor Garotti. Comment?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the speakers who did speak tonight. Very much appreciated. I'm not going to be giving my opinions on the proposed lease or development tonight, because tonight was your opportunity to speak to us councillors about your thoughts on the lease. What we do know is that there's been considerable interest in this project, both in the development and the proposed lease. We've received 891 different people visiting the Shaping Banyule website. 60 of these visitors provided contributions online, and 34 different people attended the face-to-face consultation sessions. Now, you'd be interested to know that 117 written submissions were received. It's stated in the report that of those 117, that 94 submissions supported the proposal. Now, I've read every single one of these submissions. I counted 92 in support, just as a matter of interest. And of the 92, I counted 77 from what appears to be 3 sporting clubs who are current tenants of Chelsworth Park. And each club seemed to use their own template letter. So they were the Harriers and what I assumed to be Old Ivanhoe Grammarians Football Club, even though it wasn't actually listed on the template letter who those particular submissions were from. I knew some of the names who'd signed, so that's how I made the assumption. And then the third being Old Ivanhoe Soccer Club. Now, of the 59 who I assumed to be from Old Ivanhoe Footy Club that signed a template letter, 24 of those did not actually state Banyule as their home address. We do need to be mindful that a priority for the councillor group is to represent ratepayers in the municipality. The report also states that 20 submissions were received that opposed the proposal or had some serious concerns. I counted 26 who either opposed the proposal outright, who had serious concerns. Now, I think ultimately, if you compare the 26 opposing who all presented individual submissions and are all local residents within Banyule and around the park area, compare that on balance with the number of template submissions we received, many of which were signed simply a signature. And as I said, I needed to know some of those names only because I live in the area to know that they were from the area. I think on balance, what comes through to me, Mayor, is that we have an equal number of supporters and opposers to the lease and the proposed development. So that's all I'm going to say at this point in time, other than thank you very much for those who have contributed. It is of serious interest to our community and I acknowledge it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just speak to note that so it'll be the next council meeting, I believe, on the 20th of May, where a report now will come to council on whether we wish to proceed or not with the lease. I think it's fair to say, with all the feedback that we've received and even councillors that aren't even in the south, I've fielded emails and phone calls, and I appreciate that from the residents. We're going to have a very big decision to make on the 20th. and I think that we've got a lot of reflection to do over the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to the final officer report, but yeah, I think Councillor McKern has summed it up well, that there's certainly some very strong opinions, and there's probably a balance in the community as to in favour or against. So, big decision for us in 3 weeks' time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Councillor Castaldo?
I'd just like to acknowledge all those that did contribute feedback to this process. We've gone on quite a long journey, and we do need to go on a long journey on this, given the significant lease period and the large amount of infrastructure that may go in there if we go forward. There's a lot of stakeholder groups. We've got to make sure we've reached all of those different stakeholder groups. It may be a decision between council and a school, but there are a lot of other important stakeholders, residents, and the different user groups of those facilities down there. So it's really important that we take our time, and as councillors said, we've got that coming to council next meeting, and I welcome the ongoing contribution of our community, providing us information and feedback on their views, and the discussion that will continue on until that vote next council meeting.
Further comment? I'll just make a few comments before we vote. I'd like to thank all the residents for their attendance and presentation tonight, and the many, many submissions we have received, and the extensive consultation process. I've attended one online and one in person, and it's been the in-depth conversation and the ability and the knowledge that some people have in these areas is quite remarkable, and I really appreciate that input. So it will be a difficult decision at the next council meeting, and the officer's report will guide us in that direction. But if anyone's got any further concerns or thinks that there's something that hasn't been raised, welcome that feedback right up to the point we make that decision. So I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. Might just give a minute for anyone who would like to leave after that item, so they don't disturb the next item. Thank you. We'll move on to petitions. There is one petition tonight. The Inclusive Plan and Banyuls Councils and the LGBTIQA+ Inclusion Plan. There are no speakers. There is a councillor report. I look for council to move a motion. Moved Councillor Champion, seconded Councillor Neely. Councillor Champion.
Nothing in great detail to say, as this is simply a petition that we table, receive and we look into, and we're happy to look into that. So thank you very much to those who have contributed to the petition. We'll certainly look into it and provide a response in appropriate timeframe. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? I'll put that. Oh, was that voting or asking for a comment? Oh, Councillor McKern.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, as has been mentioned by the mover, 10 signatories to the petition requesting a plan to advance inclusion of LGBTQIA+ people in Banyule in the way of an advanced plan. Now, I find this curious because my understanding is that Banyule Council is already a leader in the space of LGBTQIA+ inclusivity and provides numerous actions, events, activities and advocacy and support. So I'm actually interested in seeking clarification from the appropriate director as to what additional support is actually being asked for through this petition, and is it consistent with delivery from like councils? Thank you, Mayor.
Jo, would you like to respond on behalf of council?
Thank you, through the Mayor. We currently have an inclusive manual plan, and that incorporates our LGBTIQA plus work that we do rather than having a standalone plan. So we are seen as leaders in this sector. We have our population advisory committee, we have our diversity statement, and we do a lot of inclusionary activities for this community. But because it is not a standalone plan, I think there might be some confusion, but we'll do some investigations and bring a report back to Council.
Thank you, Director. That's the sort of clarification I was seeking. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. Sorry. Councillor, did you?
Okay.
Yeah, just I think it's important that the community understand that we as councillors, well, myself, I would like to be contacted by any members who would be part of this petition so that we have some information leading into a report. Coming back from council officers. We do have the LGBTIQA plus committee, which we do receive recommendations, etc. But it would be good if I could hear from the community about what their concerns are, and particularly also what where it falls short, like where the current plan would fall short as well. I'd like to hear about that. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comment? I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to item 3.1, the endorsement of the Council's Bendigo City Council position at MAV motions. MAV State Council to be held on the 17th of May 2024. There are no speakers. I look for a council to move a motion. Move Councillor Neely with a slight amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion, well, fellow councillors have added some amendments, so I'm reading on their behalf. Attachment 1 with amendments to the following motions. Motion 16 from not support to support, and motion 70 from not to support to support. So moved.
Move, Councillor, seconded, Councillor Grady. For those who look a bit bewildered by this, the MAV is the peak body for all councils, and twice a year we have the State Council and councils right across Victoria put up motions to be voted on, and it's this council's practice to have a copy of those so councils and then council officers make a recommendation whether this council should support those motions or not, and this gives our MAV rep, Councillor Neely, guidance on how they should be voted at those forums. So a very good process, I think, and an excellent way of making sure that we whatever we're voting on supports our current policy. So would the councillor like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll defer the amendments to my fellow councillors who raised them to speak to those. As the report says, there was over 70 motions from councils across Victoria, and these motions go to a conference, and then all councils vote on whether they support these motions, as the Mayor just mentioned. So reading all motions, I found that they had very consistent themes, and the themes were consultation, communication, and that's what councils are crying out for in a time where we have to be very sensible economically. Councils are asking also to be kept in the loop on pressing issues like identifying needed infrastructure, open space and social housing in our municipalities. Councils are also concerned about, as I've mentioned, the financial sustainability, as rate capping, local government election costs, increases in the cost of waste. All of this is imposed on councils, and costs are increasing significantly. Council costs are increasing at a greater rate than the rate cap, and that's been the case for at least the last 3 years. One motion in the report is to allow Local Government Victoria to fully understand the impact of increased election costs from the VEC on council budgets, and I think that request is very reasonable. So, reading through them, there's a lot of reasonable requests that do apply to Banyule specifically. Education around AI applications, looking at the risk and implications of AI, needs more emphasis. And this is not only the case in the local government sector. This is the case in many organisations and businesses. I really do feel strongly on motion 66, the state governments to reverse their declining funding for public libraries. We're required to deliver the service, and we're required to deliver it with reduced funding. And I would like to know the rationale behind that. Another one to mention, violence against women, unfortunately, is at the forefront of the news, as we know. And violence against women is on the increase in Victoria. As the motion states, research shows that the prevention of violence works best when delivered locally. Over 25 women have already been murdered this year, so all of these motions do have an impact for councils. Councils cannot fund all of this alone. That's the reality of it. There's so much. Oh, am I out of time? I'll be very quick. There's so much that councils do, and just in the report, the other common things were support for Victorian roads, strengthening our planning system, improving public transport, environmental mitigation, social housing. So councils are the first point of call when things go wrong. They're the most accessible in terms of government to the community, and the community expects really good infrastructure, good services and a bright future. So the appropriate consultation and communication and funding is paramount. Thank you, Mayor. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you. Well said. So would the seconder like to speak? Councillor Grotting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments. So Councillor Neely is our delegate to the MAV, so she'll be attending on our behalf and voting on these motions, and I think you'll be accompanying her as well as the Mayor. The MAV motion process can be dynamic. So on the day there'll be amendments, there'll be alternatives, all those things. We've given some direction to Councillor Neely, but ultimately you will need to be making the call on those motions, and I just want to lend my voice to say that I fully back you and the Mayor to make those calls as they arrive on the day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any further comment? Councillor McKern.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Just briefly wanted to talk to motion 16, which relates to sea level rise in Hobsons Bay. I think it's a bit of a misnomer, and we have actually gone from not supporting to supporting that particular motion. It was mentioned by the officers that it wasn't really relevant to Banyule, but when you read between the lines, it actually speaks to changing some of our overlays in the Victorian planning scheme, which as sea levels rise in response to climate change, and we also suffer the effects of ground inundation, where before we weren't getting flooding, now we are getting flooding. We need to be looking at the Victorian planning controls for flood overlays and whether the current controls are still relevant going into the future. Those overlays are important to be reviewed, and this motion speaks to the Victorian planning scheme and amendments to it to review the overlays, particularly in relation to flood-prone areas. Our coasts at this point in time are perhaps a lot more vulnerable, but it doesn't mean that areas like Banyule may not suffer other flooding consequences as a result, particularly in low-lying areas. So I think it's good that we're actually making that change to support it because, as I said, it's not just about Hobsons Bay, it's about the entire coastline, and it's also about the Victorian planning scheme and its current overlay controls needing revision in response to climate change and flooding and other impacts from climate change. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further comments? I'll put that in the name of Councillor Neely. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to item 3.2, the awarding of the contract to construct a new sprinkler system for the ground and first floor at Watermark in Greensborough. There is one speaker, Kavan Hill, from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group, to address the council. Welcome, Kavan.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing is I'm curious to know, what drives this. When the facility was built, there would have been a fire engineer's assessment and recommendation as to what sprinkling was required. So I know that would have been the case. Why has this necessity now come about if in fact the fire engineer signed off in the first place, and to what extent would the fire engineer be liable for not providing appropriate report, which has now caused this extra expense to come along? And the second thing is the curious nature of the tendering process. There is only one tender out of 19 interested parties or parties who received the invitation. I'm not suggesting that there's anything untoward about the process. I'm simply curious to know why 19 or 1 out of 19 proponents submitted a tender. Could it be that the tender document was written in such a way inadvertently that only one tenderer could respond? 2, is it because all the other tenderers sensed that because the successful tenderer was already an incumbent supplier to the council, they probably had little prospect of succeeding, and why waste your time and money preparing the tender? So I'm just raising the questions out of curiosity. It's extremely curious that you get one only tender. And it goes on and talks about other small amounts of money for the council. $309,000 are being now required and injected into demands for the 2025 budget. I'm sure that's going to put a lot of pressure on you. I notice also that of the 19 prospective companies, that the succeeding company had a PPE supplier called Panku Safety Solutions, which is an Indigenous-owned business. To what extent was that weighted in the consideration? And what it doesn't say anywhere here is the weighting of price in the total thing, because how can you weight it? You only had one tender. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. There was a couple of questions there.
Yeah, Mayor, I was going to just, through yourself, just seek a response on those questions. I think the two main ones that I picked up and would be good to get a response on for the gallery, but the driver of the expenditure, so what's driven the expenditure, perhaps a response to that question first.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So it's not uncommon for council to audit its own buildings. They change in their use and floor plans over time. As part of those audits, we look to see whether the building is still safe and functioning as it should. And as part of the review that was undertaken of this building, these improvements in relation to the sprinkler systems were identified. They weren't deficiencies from the first building permit issued for the building, but more about that adaptation of building and life over time.
Thank you. And then just to follow a secondary question, but just some concerns were raised around the tender process, and in particular how only one provider responded. Can we get some commentary from, or receive some commentary from the appropriate officer?
Yes, certainly, and through you, Mayor. I think this piece of work does present some complexity. It is a retrofitting into an existing building. It is also does require the work to be hooked up to the building monitoring systems. So it is quite complex. And I think while, it is true that 19, tenderers downloaded it, it's not unusual for a lot of tenders to download. But given the complexity of the work, I would suggest that's why we did only receive one respondent.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll look for a councillor to move a motion. Moved Councillor Garotti, seconded Councillor Di Pasquale. Comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will comment. And just for the benefit of the gallery, I just wanted to read out some of the questions I raised myself when, as councillors, we received these paper. But question 1, why do we think we only received one tender response? And have we contacted any of the other prospective companies that downloaded the documents as to why they didn't provide a response? Were the tender specs too complicated, and did this deter other companies from putting in a bid? Are there any learnings or insights about the procurement approach that we can take forward to ensure this does not occur again? And finally, how do we know we've secured a good value money outcome for the council and our community, given only one bid received? So these are the questions as councillors, and it wasn't just myself, in fairness, it were other councillors raising it as well, including Councillor Castaldo. These are the questions that we ask of the officers, because when a tender goes out and we have only one response come back in, that is a concern. Because how can we be assured that we're actually receiving a good value money outcome for the council? The reality is with these works is that from a compliance and safety perspective, they must proceed, because obviously one option for a council is to defer that expenditure. And so, well, look, let's put it on hold. Let's revisit the approach, revisit the market. Let's even revisit the need for the expenditure. That's not an acceptable outcome for the council or the community, because there are issues there that need to be addressed through these works. From a value for money perspective, officers are sure that there were independent costs analysis done and reports that indicated that the tender response was in line with those expectations. But I suppose at the end of the day, I will move it because these works do need to occur. But for the benefit of the gallery and our community, in no uncertain terms have we expressed our concern to the Chief Executive Officer around the process. And I will be very reticent, very hesitant in the future to ever again approve a tender outcome coming to this council where there's only one response. So that is a heads up to officers that we expect much better out of our procurement process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Di Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, my ears did perk up a little bit when I heard that Watermark did need a new sprinkler system. I think that goes without saying. I think everyone will be thinking, well, the building was built with regulations and everything was signed off. Why would it have to change? Watermark now is 12 years old, so it's not young anymore. She's not young, but over that time, regulations I've found have changed. So with regards to, because there were some investigations with regards to building structure, and over that time, regulations have changed. So this has come out of an audit that, and the recommendation is to actually change that. So I understand that. I think that's feasible and understandable. On the other hand, with regards to the tenders, being only one tender coming in, that does, and I do agree, that does sound a little bit hard to take, where I would, if I was wanting to do any works, particularly personal works or anything like that, I would get 3 quotes and compare those. So here we effectively have one. But if we look at what was budgeted and what's allocated, it's falling just on just about $300,000 short of what was allocated and budgeted, or what's available. So that's about 20 to 25%. So I'm not 100% comfortable, but I'm comfortable enough to move this forward tonight and vote in favour of this tonight, being that it is such an important thing. And I think if we had more tenders, I don't know how much less we could get it for. Probably not much more. Not much less. So I'm happy to be voting for this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments? I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to item 3.3, opting into the contract for the MAV 1.23, provision of trucks, buses, specialised trucks, truck bodies and trailers. There are no speakers. There is a councillor report. I'll look for councillor to move. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councillor Castaldo, comment?
Yeah, this is just to opt into a panel. So the MAV ran a process and they've got a panel now, and council can choose to use that panel in the future or choose not to. So it's really just quite procedural. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the comment. Any other councillors wish to comment? I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. Move on to item 3.4, record of council meetings. There are no speakers. Look for a councillor to move a motion. Move Councillor Neely, second Councillor Nikos. Comment? There is no comment. I'll put that. All those in favour? Thank you. We'll move on to item 4.1, Child and Youth Framework 2021 to 2031, Year 2 Summary Report and Year 3 Action Plan. We have one speaker, Melissa Murphy-Webster. Welcome, Melissa.
Good evening, councillors. I have to say this is a very robust document. It's got a lot to cover. So I have to admit I've never really paid much attention to the frameworks behind the interactions that the council have with their families, because I mostly just enjoy the benefits of the community events. And I'm mindful that making sure the children's activities are extremely important and that they remain interested in animals, especially as so many are now just born straight into looking into a screen. As I said, there's a lot to unpack. However, I think it's really impressive the amount of funding that was secured by the Department of Education for the upgrades to the kindergartens to ensure that the children are getting better equipment and infrastructure, and I believe that's wonderful. And so many schools are getting the funding, which is a really good job by the officers. I love that the framework provides so much activities that support children to understand, engage with, enjoy and care for the natural environment, as well as understanding where vital, healthy foods come from. Some of you know I'm a massive fan of refuse, reuse and recycle, highlighting the refuse component. I believe there's an overconsumption problem, and teaching our children about how waste is created is something we need to do better. I would like to see more emphasis put on explaining to children how and where products are made, the life cycles, and the transportation and end-of-life logistics to fully comprehend the impacts a product has to the environment. I like that there's importance on and a lot of covering development, diverse range of skills, and I hope there's encouragement for adolescents to seek a wide range of sources to source this information, not just from the normal status quo or current narrative, so they can develop skills, not just motor skills, but also the vital skills of questioning, analysing and evaluating information to form a reliable judgment and action so they can grow both mentally and physically. So I'm loving it. And it's kind of nice to come up here and go, I like it, as opposed to normal.
Thank you very much, Melissa. That was very good. There is an officer recommendation. I'll look for someone to move. Councillor.
Just got a quick question for the relevant director. There's a lot to this report, significant actions. Could you just speak to one particular one that jumped out at me, the no wrong door approach? That's a new term to me.
Thank you, through the Mayor. The no wrong door approach is really about making sure that our staff are skilled up to be able to give any information that a family might require at a given time, rather than just telling them to go somewhere else to get that information. So it's really about supporting, no matter where they ask for that information as the first point of contact, that we're able to provide that to them and we're not giving them the runaround.
Any further questions? Look for a council to move. Councillor Castaldo, seconded Councillor Neely. Comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant work and the reporting that went into this agenda item. If you haven't looked in the attachments to the agenda, there's a couple of attachments there to be read, and I acknowledge Melissa Murphy-Webster's comments as well. Thank you for that. It's nice to hear support for our officers. They do occasionally like to have community members thank them for their significant work. In this case, there's a tremendous amount of actions that are going across the first 1,000 days, the 3 to 12 and the 12 to 25 categories. There's a range of actions there. It's a little bit difficult to identify exactly how well we're progressing in a lot of these issues, but it gave me a lot of confidence when I called the director up today and they spoke a bit about some of the detail in this report. And one of the things in a large organisation like ours is that people might sometimes think that we're giving them a run around. It's not our job, it's someone else. Call this person, call that person. I thought this is one really good example where we've moved to avoid that scenario when people that need help know that they're going to get it when they call us. So I was really happy with that element. There's just one other small item on the, I thought there's a small shortfall of action around sustainability from the 12 to 25-year-old category group, and I've raised that with tonight. The actions are for noting, they're not finalised. So I've asked to have a little bit more information on that and see if we can make a bit better robust actions for this year 3 in the action plan. So I think overall I'm very happy with this. I think there's a tremendous amount of work, and thank the officers for their work progressing us in this area where we want to make sure every single child in Banyule has the best possible start, and we do everything we can to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment? Councillor Neely.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to highlight another role that Council does, it's to support better outcomes for children and young people in Banyule now and into the future. The report acknowledges the needs of young people of different ages, the fact that they're unique, and kids are unique physically, socially and psychosocially, and breaking it down into years makes it very accessible, 2 to 3 years. The help is around assisting kids with breastfeeding and mothers with breastfeeding their kids and sleep. 3 to 12 years, including preschool, including culturally and linguistically diverse outreach support, and 12 to 24, youth support through our JETS creative art facility, workshops to secondary school students, and holiday events and festivals, and the list goes on. They're just the ones I wanted to highlight. So I'd like to see progress made in these areas on all of this work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comment? I'll just make a few comments. I'd like to thank the staff, because you read the report, it's just extraordinary, the length and breadth of the contentions we have with children right from first stages, infant welfare support, kindergarten support, right through school, and then the highlight I often think is the youth summits which we've run, which have just been incredibly successful and wonderful to be part of. So I'd like to thank Joe and your whole team for excellent work and the amount of goodness you do for all our kids. So thanks very much for that. So I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to item 4.2, the adoption of the proposed gambling harm prevention policy 2024 to 2028. There is one speaker, Michelle Jarvis, Citizen of the Year, who leaves her phone on.
It does harm the community, and I support Council's policy and priorities to reduce and prevent the insidious and growing harm from gambling. It's interesting and troubling to note that women are more susceptible to gambling harm due to social isolation, part-time work and lower incomes, and when they gamble, the effects on their households and families is bad. Whilst also noting the nexus between family violence and problem gambling, where the majority of victims, survivors are female. And I personally have examples of this as a child and as an adult. Gambling harms and stresses families. It's also important to note that this policy must deal with a range of issues. It's not just the one-armed bandits, it's the horses and all the other online sports and where there are increasing opportunities to gamble and to bet with mates. This policy is most definitely needed to combat the normalisation and growing gambling culture, which is aimed at our children. And we just have to look at the amount of advertising in major sporting events. I support the Council's motion and the proposed gambling harm prevention policy. I support Banyule seeking to take a leadership position with the Alliance for Gambling Reform, and I look forward to the reporting back on progress towards implementing the gambling harm prevention policy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good work. There is a motion now. I believe there is an amendment to this. Councillor Grotti, would you like to read out your amendment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move that Council 1 adopts the proposed Banyule Gambling Harm Prevention Policy 24 to 28 with the following additions to be made under priorities on page 11 as detailed below. Where the policy refers to priority 1 direct interventions in point 2, prevent gambling advertising on council-owned and operated community buildings, that additional words are added to the policy which reflect including leased and licensed facilities where possible and all libraries in the City of Banyule. 1B, where the policy refers to priority 1 direct interventions in point 3, not hold council-run events and meetings in gambling venues, that additional words are added to include in privately owned gambling venues and to avoid other venues where possible. 1C, where the policy refers to priority 1 direct interventions in point 4, review council grants and awards programs to prevent council funds being used to promote gambling activities, that additional words are added to include and organisations that generate an income through gambling. 2, 3, 4 as is, and 5 to refer consideration of the proposed Banyule Gambling Harm Prevention Policy 2024 to 2028, in particular the potential introduction of tighter planning controls regarding any proposed application for new and or additional electronic gaming machines, EGMs in Banyule, where a permit is required, with an aim to prevent an increase of EGMs in the municipality in its review of the planning scheme by the future 2024-28 Council. So moved, Mayor.
Moved Councillor Grotti, seconded Councillor McCone. Comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, sorry, Councillor. Mayor, just for the purpose of those listening and viewing as well, could we just have a quick summary of point 2, 3 and 4, what they actually refer to, please?
Do you want to read that out, Councillor Grotti, or would you want me to?
I'm happy to read out points 2. So, point 2, note that a proposal to become a leadership council with the Alliance for Gambling and Reform at an annual cost of $25,000 will be presented to the 2024-28 Council for consideration through the 25-26 budget process. 3, receives an annual achievements report in June 2025 regarding the achievements of Year 1 Banyule Gambling Harm Reduction or Harm Prevention Policy Action Plan. And 4, thanks respondents who provided feedback on the Banyule Gambling Harm Prevention Policy, including RSLs, throughout the consultation process.
Thank you, Mayor. A bit of a coincidence, though. May we get some information about the direct interventions in point 2, 3 and 4, please?
So I think that's a question for officers.
Joe, would you mind answering the implications of some of these amendments?
So in terms of direct interventions through the Mayor, what we are looking at doing is we're recommending that any council-operated buildings, leased buildings or council-owned buildings where we have Wi-Fi, that any access to gambling, online gambling sites are blocked at all times, that no council-owned buildings can have any type of gambling advertising on them. And in terms of the holding events, what we are saying is that the preference is not to hold, it's to not hold any events in privately owned gambling venues, and also where possible to avoid events at other gambling venues, but that's taking into account RSLs and the work that they do with communities. So there may be times where events will be held there, but it's not encouraged because of the EGMs being there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Would you like to make some comments, Councillor Grotty?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So just like our Speaker, Michelle, pointed out, yeah, as a council, we're very happy with the policy, and obviously I'm happy to be moving forward. We thought some of these, one thing I do want to point out is through the consultation process, just a thank you to officers at the request of the Mayor and I to sit down face to face with the RSLs. It's one thing to do things through shaping Banyule and sending out emails and questionnaires, but I think with the work that our RSLs do, and we've just come out of Anzac Day and overwhelmed with the response at the Watsonia RSL, you have to sit down and you have to eyeball these people who have served our country and to hear them out. And so I'm very grateful that the officers took on board that feedback from the Mayor and I to sit down face to face with the RSLs and hear them out. But essentially what we're looking to do with these amendments is just to tighten a couple of things up. So for example, we don't really want at council libraries or council lease facilities students to be able to use Wi-Fi to get onto things like Sportsbet or Ladbrokes. You know, we're trying to deter gambling, and we know that one of the fastest growing forms of gambling is online sports-based gambling. So as a council, if we can help control and moderate that, we will. Point number 5, the amendment there with, Councillor McKern's suggestion, that's about just saying, well, what can we do in our planning levers to ensure that, we've almost set a bit of a cap around EGMs and that we're working with owners and including RSLs, a long-term approach to try and reduce gambling in the city in a structured way through the planning environment. I thought it was particularly important to have the amendment in 1B that we carve out where council will hold its events and venues, that we do not exclude RSLs. I know that, so now at least we can go to RSLs and we can do community events and functions there, because most of us, I would say almost all of us as councillors, we rock up on Anzac Days and Remembrance Days and we celebrate with the veterans and we celebrate with the RSLs. I know that through the Watsonia Town consultation process, the Watsonia RSL opened up their venue to enable consultation with the community to incur. So I think it's very important that we do not exclude them, that we do not sell them out through this process. I think the amendments signify to the community and to the industry that we're serious about tackling gambling. We're deadly serious as a council, but at the same time, we're not going to sell out our RSLs. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. 635 poker machines in 9 venues across Banyule in the financial year of 2022-23 cost this council, cost our residents more than $57 million. I therefore support that council has a role to play in preventing gambling harm, which is consistent with council's role to protect and promote health and wellbeing under the Victorian Public Health and Wellbeing Act of 2008. Gambling harm, as has been mentioned, isn't just about financial harm. It affects relationships, health, work, study, and can lead to criminal activity. And one of the reasons I did suggest point 5 is because the Victorian Planning Scheme is one of the most, if not the most, important document that councils in Victoria have to control land use and development. And gambling venues are a land use. And to this end, I'm going to, through you, Mayor, ask if the Director of City Development might comment further on the Victorian planning controls and councils that she might know of that are already implementing special provisions to try and prevent new and additional electronic gaming machines being introduced in their municipalities.
Have you finished your commentary, Councillor McKern? Would the Director mind answering that question?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Clause 5228 of the Banyule Planning Scheme includes the gaming provisions, and it has a schedule that councils can then tailor to their specific needs. Currently, Banyul's schedule ensures that gaming venues are not permitted within a series of shopping complexes and in our strip shopping centres, but it probably lacks what some other councils, such as Manningham, have included in their planning schemes in terms of locational requirements that would need to be met for new venues to be considered, that provide for separation distances from sensitive uses and other things of that nature. So there's certainly opportunity to take some of the matters adopted within the gambling harm prevention policy and looking to whether they can be supported through this schedule in our planning scheme.
Thank you. Further comment? Councillor Nikos.
Thanks, Mayor. Gambling affects many people within our community, and as we've read from the report, when one person gambles, 6 are affected. As a child, I was one of these, as my dad loved to bet on the horses, and I know how it affected my family. There are many reasons why people turn to gambling, and policies such as this one are very important to a preventative public health approach that addresses gambling-related harm within our Banyul community. It's great to hear feedback from the 191 community members, and it's really important that when council asks for feedback, that as many community members get involved, whether it's about gambling, pets, youth plans, whatever. We just need people to get involved and tell us their thoughts on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment? Councillor Castaldo.
I'd just like to read out one paragraph that was in this report. Overall community perception of gambling was predominantly negative, with concerns about its harmful, problematic and dangerous impacts. Negative themes include belief that gambling is exploitation, harmful to vulnerable individuals and contributes to social problems. A smaller fraction acknowledged it is a recreational activity within acceptable boundaries. This latter group emphasised the positive impact on sports clubs and RSLs through funding. I find this a very difficult issue. I know my family has been impacted by gambling, violence and other problems to the broader family. No families, I think, are immune to the problems that come from gambling. And I think it's a parasitic behaviour on the vulnerable, and no one should have the right to take advantage of people that struggle to manage their losses, and that includes the RSLs. I find it very difficult to support this tonight, but there's 3 amendments up there that go further to reduce the harm of gambling. One that goes against making it tougher. On the whole, I'm going to support this tonight, but I don't think we should give anyone off the hook because they do something good. They should be able to do something bad. So I think we've got a lot of work to do here, and but I'll support this evening.
Further comment? Councillor Neely.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillors with all your slightly varied views. I just wanted to mention that Banyul has a public health approach to gambling, so focusing on the priorities of our community wellbeing. And as we all know, the effects of the harm can be devastating for families. People have the choice to gamble. You don't have to gamble. However, as a council, we really do have to be responsible to residents to provide them with relevant support, relevant information, accurate data and evidence-based policy and initiatives. The community is concerned about harm from gambling, particularly how it exploits vulnerable people or individuals. We know it's widespread. We know it's very easily available. As Councillor Grotti mentioned, it attracts our young people, and you know we have to do something about that. I am very grateful for the community's suggestions to address gambling, advertising and advocacy to support venues to remove electronic gaming machines. I think that's a really good way forward. We have to collaborate with local organisations. We have to collaborate with health agencies and address all the gambling related issues. So I'm supportive of Council's preventative approach or public health approach and reducing financial harm in our municipality, keeping people connected and encouraging improved mental health outcomes is the way forward to do this. Thank you.
Any further Councillor Di Pasquale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, So gambling in a community, in a society, I think we have to be realistic that it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. From the dawn of time, for every civilization, forever, there have been people in the community who have gambled. That's part of human nature. I put it in the same category as addictions like cigarette smoking, excessive alcohol. Gambling can be an addiction, so it needs to be spoken about. It needs to be a healthy community needs to educate itself and the members of that society that it is a problem if it gets out of hand. What I want to talk to tonight is the issue we have with our younger members of our community on their phones, and how we have never seen a situation, or we haven't had a generation yet who have come out of being addicted to phones and phone use. And like all other addictions, like smoking, alcohol, gambling, it's that dopamine hit. And unfortunately, everyone in this room here tonight grew up in a time without a phone when they were very young. Unfortunately, now the youngsters out there all have phones very, very young. So they're being addicted very, very early. So this is where I think we need to be focusing our efforts. I think we need to be focusing on the children and trying to educate them that, yes, our society will have gambling, because all societies do, but we need them to be more responsible than our generation are. We need them to take the lead and to educate each other and support each other to become leaders. And maybe we could get the youngsters, turning away from gambling. Who knows what could happen in the future. I'd like to see that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Champion.
Just pushing you back, Mayor. I do hear what my fellow councillors are saying, and I hear mostly the harm that gambling does. What I am going to put on the table is that there are organisations that do receive money from gambling, like the RSLs, like Tattersalls, who also use that money for the benefit of the community. With the attempted reduction in gambling for our communities, so too that funding will be reduced and has to come from somewhere else. What is incredibly distressing, Councillor Mark mentioned the phones, the advertising, Ladbrokes, Sportsbet, etc. Regular advertising on the television at all hours, and obviously on phones. That is probably the most distressing gambling opportunities that everybody has who owns a phone or a television and watches them and uses them. I think there needs to be greater responsibility by organisations like Ladbroke and Sportsbet to reduce their gambling or do something that reduces, as well as local government, state government, federal government and individuals. Councillor Rick is absolutely right. We support the RSLs for their support of the veterans who've looked after us and created a free communities to live in, free country to live in. So I will be supporting this wording this evening for that, but we still have a long way to go.
I think I'll make a few comments. As it was pointed out, 57 million is lost. When you compare that to just over 100 million when this council collects in rates per year, and people comment on the rates constantly, you look at the services we provide for that rate revenue. When you look at the parks, the libraries, the infant childhood, all the services that council provides, what benefit are we getting out of the 57 million that's lost in gambling? That's not what's put in the machines, that's what's lost in the machines across Banyule. It's an extraordinary amount of money when you think about it. 57 million, and what do we get in return? And I remember reading things when I was part of the Gambling Alliance that 8 out of 10 people that are gambling are suffering harm of some description. That's the level of harm for people who gamble. And as it's talked about, these overseas companies that are registered in the Northern Territories that run these gambling ads constantly, which the AFL and the state government receive an enormous amount of revenue out of and therefore continue to allow it to occur. I think the AFL should be ashamed of what they've done and get involved with gambling. And I think the state government needs to look at their funding model and their support because of the money they raise from gambling as well. So this council will do what we can, but I think we need the state government to step up because gambling revenue is one of the third highest revenue raiser in this state, which is a terrible indictment. So I'll support this tonight. Understand this conflict between the RSLs. The RSLs do an enormous amount of good work, but there's also gambling harm occurs at their venues, and I know they work very hard with their communities to prevent that. So it is very complex, but I will support this amendment tonight, but we do need to do so much more, not only as a council, but as a state. I'll put that, all those in favour. That is carried. We move on to item 7.2, 15 Louise Street, Heidelberg, proposed road discontinuance and sale of land considerations and for the considerations of hearings. We have two speakers. Nicola Lamb-Cuba will be represented by Harriet Medeiros, is it? Welcome. You'll address the council about your submission.
Good evening, councillors. We object to the proposal as follows. Council has powers under Local Government Act 1989, Schedule 11, to remove anything that encroaches or obstructs the free use of land and that reduces the breadth or confines the limits of a road. Under Building Regulations 2018, Regulation 92, it states, a fence exceeding a height of 1 metre above the footpath must be set back from the point of intersection of street alignments at least 9 metres. There needs to be an unobstructed visual line of sight around a road deviation, ensuring the safety of pedestrians and vehicles using road network. This has been denied to the public and our community by the illegal encroachment of the fence. The fence is 2.5 metres high with 3 metre high pillars, adding council's retaining wall, making the fence 3.5 metres high above the natural ground level, 3 times the height of building regulations and the Victorian planning provisions. Under the Building Regulations 89 states that a front fence on a non-declared road, the maximum height is 1.5 metres. This is twice the height of the building regulations. Banyule City Council have a responsibility and a duty of care to comply with the building regulations under the Building Act 1993. It should be noted that the owners have illegally built external stairs, a non-compliant vehicle crossover without permits and permission from council. There are a risk hazard and dangerous, creating a lack of visibility. If this proposal goes through, not only are you accepting all other illegal non-compliance works at this property on council assets, you are setting precedents for other owners to do the same, not only in this council, but all councils throughout Victoria once it's published in the Government Gazette. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one speaker, another speaker, Diane Tamas. Is Diane in the room? Oh, sorry. What was your name? Ron Tamas. Ron. Welcome, Ron.
So good evening, councillors. My name's Ron Tamas and I've been residing at 15 Louise Street for 10 years. I'm here today to discuss the resolution of the French encroachment at that address. It was brought to our attention that a document was disseminated to multiple suburbs within Banyule area, and a copy has been submitted to the council. We're aware that the letter was created by a disgruntled neighbour in an attempt to sabotage and prohibit us from resolving the encroachment through purchasing the parcel of land from the council. The document was disseminated in an attempt to influence and recruit others to submit objections. The inflammatory document included derogatory statements pertaining to our character in an attempt to smear our reputation. The submissions provided to the council were clearly influenced by the content of this document, and as the submissions all correlate with the same false allegations. Some of these submissions are in reference to the fence, stairs and landscape at 15 Louise Street, Heidelberg. All of these repetitive references are irrelevant to the encroachment and its resolution. Multiple submissions referred to the fence being illegally constructed. We strongly refute this allegation as it is incorrect and clearly a false statement, along with being irrelevant to the encroachment. Our fence was legally constructed as we worked in collaboration with Banyule Council. We worked throughout the entire construction process from the planning stages to its completion and subsequent approval, and then obviously being signed off by the council. Thankfully, due to the poorly written nature of the letter, majority of residents who received this letter were able to analyse its poor validity and interpret the negative hostile undertones. Unfortunately, it appears some residents have been persuaded and influenced by the false statements and negative narrative. So we dispute the collective narrative that has been established regarding illegal occupation and trespass because we were not aware that it actually was a trespass. We had no prior knowledge that the fence had encroached across onto council land. It wasn't until last year where the council conducted an investigation where this came to light. The previous fence line and the current one has been there for like over 30 years. And there's photos and aerial shots to establish that as well. So just in summary, what should be a simple and safe process to resolve this newly discovered land encroachment by purchasing the land from the council has unfortunately been complicated with false and misleading information in order to persuade an alternative outcome. The purchase of the land is the best and most reasonable outcome for the two options that will both be costly to us. And this area is part of our yard and serves no further use other than a void which is currently filled with plants. We hope that we can solve and finalise this encroachment issue through this purchase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is an officer report. That's hearing of submissions. I look for a councillor to move a motion. Moved Councillor Castaldo, seconded Councillor Garotti. Comment?
Yeah, I'd like to thank those that submitted and came along this evening. This is a complex matter that needs some important feedback from officers. Tonight, this is the consideration and hearing of submissions. This is not the council decision on this item. So the next stage for this process would be, if we pass this tonight, to go to officers to provide that due diligence across the technical aspects of this this development, and so I'll be supporting the officers to provide us that technical feedback that will come to us at the next council meeting. But tonight I'll just reconfirm that it's just the receiving of and hearing of submissions.
Thank you for the comment. I'll put that. All those in favour? Thank you very much. If people would like to leave that are no longer interested, I'll just have a little 30-second break. If people would like to leave, and although there's only a few more exciting things to happen, if you want to hang around. They may wish you. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 7.3, the proposed road discontinuance and sale of RW239 at the rear of 19 Grieve Street, McLeod. There are no speakers. There is an officer report. I'll look for a council to move a motion. Move a motion. Moved Councillor Champion, seconded Councillor Garotti. Comment? Any other comment on this item? I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move to item 7.4, Watermark Steam Room Urgent Rectification Work. Cavan Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group would address the council in speaking for this recommendation.
Don't fall over. Thank you, Mayor. Of course, you can't have a mouldy steam room. The question is, why is it mouldy? And again, it goes back to the sort of questions I had with the fire sprinkler systems. If this was properly designed in the first place, why do you have the problem now? Point two, I have a lot of professional experience in this space, and I can tell you it's not just as simple as pulling something down and rebuilding it, particularly building it with a steel frame. The questions that arise are, well, obviously if there's water getting through and it's on a concrete floor, there's some sort of crack for weepage to occur. And then the question is there a possibility of concrete spalling? Has that been checked? Has a structural engineer looked at it and signed off on it? Etc, etc, etc. We've just recently finished a job at Arlberg, Mount Hotham, which is a similar sort of thing, but it wasn't just a steamer, it was the whole premises. And it's a very complex problem to solve. So really the question is 130,000 enough? Have they actually investigated all the way down to the crack in the concrete, and how are they going to repair that? Has it affected the steel reinforcing? Is everybody happy to sign off on the risks that may be inherent unless these things are checked? So I say go ahead, it's fantastic. Let's have a new steam room, but let's make sure we've spent the right amount of money with the right professionals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Grotting?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask if we could have an officer response in regard to some of those questions asked. In particular, just has the nature of the problem been adequately diagnosed, and are officers confident that the budget that's been allocated will be sufficient to rectify the issue?
Through you, Mayor, yes, this is a complex piece of work. My understanding is the membrane has failed, and we are still working through what it means in terms of trying to get the expertise to understand what the fix will be. The estimates that we have at the moment is 130,000, and that's what we're looking to fix the problem, and we're hopeful that it will be fixed and it will be rectified. So that's probably the advice I can give you at the moment.
Thank you. Further comment or further questions, sir? I'll look for someone to move a motion. Move Councillor Di Pasquale and seconded Councillor Costello. Comment?
No comment. I think it's self-explanatory. I mean, works like this will have to happen. I think we need the right protocols, and thank you very much for our speaker this evening to shine a torch on what does need to be taken care of in situations like this. We don't want them happening all the time. So, yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Further comment? Councillor Costello.
I was at the sauna yesterday. It was absolutely packed. No one could even sit down just about. Look, they are well-used facilities, and I like to do due diligence and make sure we are moving forward in all of our facilities. It's been cleared out, dried up. I can see that works are underway to make sure that we avoid that risk getting greater to damage to the building. So that was good to see, and it's shocking when an accident or something goes wrong, just how big the cost can escalate and so rapidly. $130,000 for a water leak in a sauna, it's just mind-blowing what could happen if the structure of a whole platform in here was damaged. So I agree with Mr. Kevan Hill. You're here so often, I sometimes think maybe you are. But thank you for your contribution, and to the officers for moving this project forward so quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Grotting.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just, when we're discussing this amongst us councillors and with the CEO, we just did query why this has to have come to a council meeting when it is, by its recommendation, urgent rectification of a council asset. And it's 130,000, which is well within the CEO's delegation of 1 million. The CEO advised that she operates within the council-approved budget. So one thing we're now asking Director Giglio to look at is, perhaps setting aside a provision or what we can do, or a note or some mechanism within the budget to enable urgent works to occur, because I don't think that this should be waiting around for a council meeting for things that just need to happen and have to be done by the CEO. And I suppose further to that, a second question is, a related consideration is, well, what happens if it comes in at 150,000? What happens if it comes in at 160,000? Is another report going to come back saying, look, it was 130, now we're seeking another 20 or 30,000? So we need to be a bit more sophisticated here as a council. When we've got assets, when they break down, in delegation of the CEO, we need to get them done. So I'll just be asking the CEO and the Chief Finance Officer to look into that as part of the budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Further comment? I'll put that. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to item 8.1, notice of intention to declare a special rate and charge Montmorency Shopping Village. There are no speakers. There is a council report, and I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Move Councillor Champion, seconded Councillor Di Pasquale. Comment?
Thanks, Mayor. Just very briefly, just explaining that there isn't a specific decision made this evening by council. We are asking through the process for feedback from community, from the traders, from residents, before we make a decision in the next few months. And just to be clear, it is time for this to be brought to council, as well as the Montmorency Traders Association approaching us and requesting this. Also to add that Banyule is one of the very few councils in Victoria, if not maybe the only council in Victoria, that actually provides a special rate and charge scheme. What that means is that council actually provides funding towards some of our shopping precincts to assist with their marketing and activities, so that the Traders Association itself doesn't bear the whole cost. So looking forward to all the feedback when it comes. Thanks, Mayor.
Further comment? I'll put that in the name of Councillor Champion. All those in favour? That is carried. We'll move on to general items. I'll notice as motions there are none. General items of business. There are several items of general business. Councillor Champion, would you like to read your items of general business, please?
Found it. Stop looking. My general business item is not about what has happened in the past. It is about what is coming in the future. The We Are exhibition is opening on Friday the 17th of May, so that's in 2.5 weeks. It's an exhibition of those, for those, by those who identify as LGBTIQA+. It celebrates our LGBTIQA+ communities, any similarities and differences within our communities. So the exhibition, like I said, is on Friday the 17th of May. Now, if you would like to participate in this art exhibition, you are welcome to contribute to it by the 5th of May. So there's another week to go. And if you do wish to contribute by the 5th of May, so the time has been extended, please contact arts@banyule.vic.gov.au, and I will see you at Ivanhoe Library and Cultural Hub on Friday the 17th to open the exhibition. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Did you have another item?
No. Would you like me to make one up? I did not.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKern, you had 3 items, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd just like to mention that the public order review, which concerns the management of dogs and cats in public places, is underway in relation to feedback from our community. And I thought I'd mention it, Mayor, because it has attracted a lot of attention in our community. And there are 2 more community drop-in sessions in May, on the 1st of May from 4 to 7 p.m. here at the Greensborough Council offices, and next week, Wednesday 8th of May, at the Ivanhoe Library from 4 to 7. I also thought I would attend. It was mentioned earlier that virtually all the councils attended an Anzac Day service at the Heidelberg Repat Hospital on Waterdale Road. The service there last Wednesday was attended by Councillor De Morelos and myself. And one thing that's really special about that particular site for the services is that it's held in the Remembrance Garden. And the Remembrance Garden is home to some of the most beautiful mosaic artworks that we should be very proud of, because they've all been done by a local artist, Simon Normand. And I thought I'd give him a shout out because he is a local artist of international renown. We're very lucky to have his work in Banyule. And if you have the opportunity to have a look at his works in the Remembrance Garden, you can go to the site anytime. It's always open to the public. That have a look, because I think you'll be suitably impressed. And just to mention, Mayor, that a few of us councillors, together with the environment team from council staff, attended the Climate Emergency Australia conference in Footscray last week, partly held face-to-face and partly online. And Climate Emergency Australia, for those who don't know, is a network of Australian councils advocating for climate action and capacity building in local government, because all three tiers of government have a role to play in reducing carbon emissions. So we're very fortunate. We actually have a member of our own councillor group on the executive, and one of the disconcerting remarks made by specialist speakers is that even though Australia is a signatory to the Paris Agreement to try and maintain carbon emissions to a 2 degrees, or to rather maintain temperature rises to under 2 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, it looks like we are fast heading towards 3 degrees Celsius, if not more. And some of the impacts and disastrous consequences for the planet were explained. So it was a conference to reinvigorate climate action by councils. More than 100 councils are now on board, have declared a climate emergency in this country, but we still have a lot of work to do. So just wanting to let our residents know, Mayor, that we're right in there, Banyule, doing its best to do its work towards reducing carbon emissions.
Thank you. Any other items of general business? We'll comment on one. I had the privilege of attending the Children's First op shop 40-year anniversary the other week in Beetham Parade, Rosanna. Previously called the Children's Protection Society, but for an op shop to last 40 years, driven by a very strong team of wonderful volunteers. And there was a lovely lady there who was on the original committee that set the op shop up. So yeah, it was a wonderful morning's tea they had, and it's a great little op shop. If you want to go down to an op shop in Rosanna, the one in Beetham Parade is fantastic. So yeah, a great organisation, do so much work, good work, and supported by funds from the op shop. It was a very nice morning. So that was my items of general business. We'll move into public questions. We have 11 public questions tonight. The first one is from Lucas Moore, who is not present, so his question and answer will appear in the meeting minutes. Second one is Kavan Hill. I notice Kavan is here somewhere. Oh, there you are.
This is better than going to the gymnasium. My question is, in line with Council's public transparency policy, can Council provide full and complete details of the itemised expenses listed under the conferences, training and accommodation column for each councillor for the 22-23 financial year and the 23-24 financial year to date? Thank you.
Thank you. I can respond to that question. As discussed with Kevin Hill over the phone, the full and complete details will be provided to him tonight, which I have done, and in the meeting minutes that'll be fully transparent around those details. But in the interest of time, the totals for each financial year requested for each councillor will be read out tonight. So for Councillor Castaldo in 2022-2023, for the financial year it was $6,275.90. For the 23-24 year, as at this date, it's $923.40, which totals $7,199.30. For Councillor McKern, for the 22-23 financial year, $16,730.97. For the 23-24 financial year, as at today's date, $1,163.94, which totals $17,894.91. For Councillor Alison Champion, for the 22-23 financial year, it was $3,912.39. And for the 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, $115, which totals $4,027.39. For Councillor Neely, for 22-23 financial year, $3,692.39. For the 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, $222.98, which totals $3,915.37. For Councillor Metsinikos, for the 22-23 financial year, $3,909.39. For 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, it was $0, for a total of $3,909.39. For Councillor Mark Di Pasquale, for the 22-23 financial year, $1,057.39. For 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, $0, totals $1,057.69. For Councillor Peter Dimorelos, for the 22-23 financial year, $3,207.05. For the 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, $80, for a total of $3,287.05. For Councillor Grotti, for 22-23 financial year, it was $997.39. For 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, it was $2,160, which totals $3,157.39. And Councillor Melican, for 22-23 financial year, $2,828.05. For 23-24 financial year, as of today's date, $3,023.40, which totals $5,851.45. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to question 3, Lauren Stevens. Is Lauren in the room? The next question is Julian Hill. Hart, sorry. I've got that. They're not here either. Jessica Nolan. Claire Silverton. Oh, welcome, Claire. Can you ask your question, please?
First time asking questions. So my name is Claire Silverton and my question relates to the public order review into cats and dogs in Banyule. So on the 22nd of April 2024, so about 2 weeks ago, many sporting clubs operating in Banyule Council received an email from Banyule Council Sport and Recreation Liaison Officer Nicole Waldron. The direction to contact sporting clubs, as stated in the email, has come from Banyule Council's Municipal Laws team. Recipients of this email were alerted to the public order review. They were invited to comment on dogs and cats in public spaces, and a direct link to the council webpage and to the survey of this public order review was provided. They were also encouraged to contact their sporting club contacts to take part in this opportunity. In order to prevent the survey feedback from being skewed towards a single demographic, will the council be providing procedural fairness to all interested parties, and as such, will the same courtesy offered to sporting clubs also be provided to registered pet owners in Banyule? Banyule Council regularly communicates with registered pet owners through text message and email, for example, when fireworks are planned, and of course when our annual fees are due, indicating the presence of an existing distribution list. Thank you.
Well done. Could I ask the Director, Natasha Swan, to read out the answer to that question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The review of the public order seeks feedback from the whole community and doesn't specifically target any group. As part of the engagement process, officers have used Council Shaping Banyule website as well as social media. One of the benefits of using this approach is the ability for our community to use its networks in promoting the Public Order Review Initiative. A survey has also been sent to 2,000 random households seeking feedback on possible options for Council to consider in enhancing the public order. 3 in-person drop-in sessions have also been organised. To date, we've received an excellent response to the online survey and social media posts, over 7,500 visits to Shaping Banyule, as well as the drop-in sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. Melissa Murphy-Webster, who's also in the room. Could you ask your question, please?
Thank you. Generally, I'm going to just read it exactly as, otherwise I'll lose my train of thought. Generally, when a resident of Banyule is about to do significant works on their property or business, or a business intends to operate where the public is given the opportunity to object, there are notices put up in the area for passersby to see clearly. Why is Banyule Council not held to the same process of transparency? For instance, billboards or large notices with the intentions of works and the proposed cost clearly printed in the area for easy viewing. I find that unless you know about projects or interested in a specific topic, like the dog and pet process, it's quite hard to find out before the final decisions are being made, and discussions I've had within the community seem to be aligned with my concerns. Emails and having to monitor Banyule's many activities and projects is not that easy for time-poor people and families.
Thank you. And would the Director mind reading the response?
Thank you for the question. So Council secured funding for this $5.5 million from the State Government as part of the North East Link project to upgrade Watsonia Village and create a town square. The project responds to work undertaken by Council with the community in 2014 under the Picture Watsonia vision and the subsequent Watsonia Neighbourhood Concept Plan prepared in 2019 to respond to the impacts and opportunities associated with the North East Link project. So in February 2021, Council commenced our extensive consultation with an expression of interest for the establishment of a community reference group who worked alongside Council through the process of preparing design options. Broad community consultation was undertaken in November and December 2021 to provide feedback on various design options. This included face-to-face consultation, meeting with targeted groups, an online information session and a broad presence on Shaping Banyule. Notice of this consultation was done through direct mail of 2,000 postcards to local households and businesses, articles in the Banyule Banner and news from our neighbourhood features in the Bakewell and Grimshaw wards, Facebook and LinkedIn posts and in-centre signage including bin wraps, A3 shopfront posters, postcards, large corflute panels, large paste-ups, footpath decals, the library walkway feature and displays at the North East Link project, Watsonia Hub and the Watsonia Neighbourhood House. Council was pleased to receive 13,636 independent views on our website and received direct feedback from over 602 community members in relation to the concept designs. A small further consultation on the final design following the earlier, more extensive community feedback was undertaken in March 2022 before the design was approved by Council in June 2022. Finally, in August 2023, before the work started, Council held several in-person information sessions at the Watsonia Library, which were well attended. These were advertised in local shops with posters. Postcards were also sent and it was identified on Shaping Banyule. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is Jonathan Slegmold. I don't believe Jonathan's in the room. Linda Kennedy. Is Linda here? Welcome, Linda.
So my question is in relation to the public order review with dogs and cats as well. Similar to another question that was asked, the Local Government Act 2020 states the following, that participants in community engagement must be representative of the persons and groups affected by the matter that is the subject of the community engagement. Banyule's community engagement policy includes the following. Community engagement core values. Public participation seeks out and facilitates the involvement of those potentially affected by or interested in a decision. Community engagement principles. This is Banyul's community engagement principles. Inclusiveness. Making every reasonable effort to include community and stakeholders affected by a project. So given the above, what actions is Council taking to ensure that people with dogs and cats who are directly affected by this public order review are aware of the current survey and are involved in this review process? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor.
Not a councillor, but okay. Director
Natasha,
Swan.
would you mind responding? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. The community engagement plan for the review of the public order has been developed in collaboration with Council's community communications team and is consistent with our Banyul community engagement policy. The review of the order seeks feedback from the whole community and does not target any specific group. As previously stated in the other question, as part of the engagement process, we've used the Banyul website, social media, as well as a survey to 2,000 random residents. 3 in-person drop-in sessions have also been organised. To date, we've received an excellent response to the online survey and social media posts with over 7,500 visits to the council website. I note the majority of submissions received to date have come from pet owners in the community.
Thank you, and I did note that Councillor McKern and myself met with some interest groups and also reached out to other dog clubs in the municipality, and they're well aware of this process. So thank you for your questions. And the next question is Mary O'Kane, Chair of Dog People of Banyul. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, and thank you for letting me ask this question. Just to say that Dog People of Banyul is a community-wide or a Banyul municipality-wide voice that's coming together. We do not claim to represent all dog owners, but we do aim to provide a Banyul-wide voice. So while acknowledging the efforts invested by Justine Busuttil and the Municipal Laws team, how does Council intend to ensure that the process of the dogs and cats in public places public order review is both fair and evidence-based? Given that, the integrity of the data received from both surveys, the 2022 and the current 2024 one, is compromised due to significant design flaws, including bias. B, reliable quantitative and or qualitative analysis cannot be undertaken utilising flawed data. C, there appears to be missing data relating to the outcomes of reported dogs incidents. D, there appears to be limited or no consultation with industry experts, such as veterinarians or trainers. And E, a lack of transparent process and procedural fairness, in that an email was sent out on April the 22nd from Banyul Council raising awareness, and that's the same email that's been raised by previous speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Natasha, would you mind responding?
Thank you. The purpose of the 2022 survey and the current survey is to hear from our community. Community feedback will then be considered by officers together with available statistics collected over recent years related to animal aggression in our public spaces. Officers do not share your view that the surveys are biased or there is missing or insufficient information to consider possible changes to the existing public order. To date, we've received an excellent response from the community, including feedback from both pet and non-pet owners. The community engagement plan for review of the public order has been developed in collaboration with Council's communication team and is consistent with Banyul's community engagement policy.
Thank you. The last question, the person has asked her name not to be read out, so the question and response will be in the minutes, but without the name appearing. We'll move on to...
Just for transparency to the community, our Chief Executive did have to leave before the question and answer session, just to being a bit unwell. But I have noted that there were 7 out of 11 questions from the dog community in this section of the agenda. We will ensure that's communicated to the CEO, as well as the questions raised, very legitimate ones. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. I was going to raise that on the closure of the meeting, but unfortunately Alison has gone home. She's not feeling well, as Councillor Gordy pointed out. There are no confidential items tonight. The meeting is closed at 9:04. Thank you for your attendance. The next ordinary meeting will be on the 20th of May 2024. Thank you and good night.